Hello and welcome to the newest episode of Spookier Times, a podcast of horror, gothic, and weird fiction across media. I'm your host, Robert J. Gannon. You can find me there on all social media. And I have a very different topic for tonight. A little backstory about Spookier Times. I almost made this a podcast about video game lore. I'm obsessed with the backstories in games. Jackie Cation has a hilarious stand-up routine about being the kind of RPG adventure player that never leaves the library. It's me. I'm the player who never leaves the library. I think there's so much fascinating writing that goes on into the backstory of these games and characters. I used to open up the package for the latest NES release and read the instruction manual cover to cover to find out something more about the world. I would read all the in-game text. I love talking to every character in a Pokemon game. I want the flavor. I want the world. I want the sensation. And my favorite game for that of all time is Dead by Daylight. If you don't know, Dead by Daylight is an asymmetrical 4v1 horror game where you can either play as a survivor or a killer in a horror film scenario. As a survivor, you and your 3 teammates travel across a map inspired by spooky locations that may or may not look like other things, except when they actually are other things. Try to repair 5 generators to power up the exit gates, to unlock the exit gates, to escape through the exit gate before a killer with extreme powers finds you, downs you, and sacrifices you to the entity. As the killer, you go against 4 other survivors, tracking them down throughout the map, using your ability to first hit them, then down them into what's called a dying state, and throw them on a meat hook, Texas Chainsaw Massacre style. If they don't get rescued from the hook, you have successfully sacrificed them to the entity. If they do get rescued, you have to hook them again. 3 hooks guarantees they get sacrificed. 2 hooks gives you a pretty good chance. And after you hook them once with the right add-on in the game, you can do one of those incredible cinematic slasher film endings for them. The world of Dead by Daylight is fascinating. It's part of what I keep coming back for. They release new DLC every 3 months now, which will introduce a killer, a survivor, or a killer and survivor, or survivors. The game started in 2016 in this beta that I somehow lucked into through a friend. And it had 3 killers and 4 survivors. 2 of the 3 killers were inspired by major slasher figures, and the 3rd one was a ghost. So the ghost is the Wraith, who can cloak, turn him completely invisible, and when he re-emerges or disappears, he rings a bell, and he can just sneak up on survivors. Awesome. The 2 that were inspired by horror icons are the Hillbilly, a mountain man with a chainsaw, who was inspired by Leatherface, and the Trapper, a giant man wearing a mask with a machete, who sometimes uses a bear trap, inspired by Jason in Friday the 13th. The 4 survivors had varying backstories. They came from all over Europe and the United States. Claudette was a student who got on the wrong bus and wound up in the entity's realm in France. Meg and Dwight are from America, and off the top of my head, I can't remember where Jake is from. But 4 survivors, 3 killers, and a couple maps started everything. And then you dig further and further into the game. Even in its original iteration, Behavior Interactive, the developers, added all this wonderful storytelling into the game. So there's the different realms, the worlds that these places can take, these matches take place in. There's the Macmillan Estate, which is a house in the farmlands. There's Autohaven Records, which is a junkyard. There's the Red Forest, which is the giant forest, or the Yamoka Estate, which is a mansion setup or a temple setup in Japan. There's all kinds of locations all around the world where this game is set and takes place in. And these characters come from all times, all places, and all locations. Every item you can interact with in the game, and I mean like toolboxes, add-ons that go into a toolbox, powers for the killer, perks, which are these abilities you unlock to make your character stronger or play in different ways, offerings to the entity, all have little bits of flavor text to them that start to tell a wider story. The most fascinating part about the lore of Dead by Daylight is the entity itself. Themself? Herself. We don't know. We don't know a lot about the entity. We do know that the entity is incredibly powerful. The entity pulls people at juncture points in their life from all throughout time and space, and even alternate dimensions now. We'll get into that. Survivors are thrown into the game where they are forced to escape the clutches of a terrifying monster trying to kill them. Over and over and over again until their spirit is broken and there is no misery left to steal from them. Then they disappear beyond the realm of the entity, never to be seen again. Killers can come in two ways, and there's the one that's common in the game now is someone had the potential to be one of these hunters, these murderers, these killers in this game the entity created. They are killers by choice or by chance, or people fueled by vengeance or anger or terror, or people who intentionally hurt and abuse other people. Some were good, a lot were bad. All of them inevitably caused destruction when they existed in their home realm or interacted with Earth. The lore also suggests a possibility that I find even more fascinating. And I don't know if we'll ever see it in game for the reason why it's so intriguing. A survivor can become corrupted by the game, so infatuated with it that the entity decides, you know what? This one should be a killer. Imagine that. This game is so twisted and people can change so easily that there's a possibility that a normal person like you or me that's been trapped in this nightmare world could suddenly be seen as someone capable of taking joy and energy and excitement out of murder. That's terrifying, and I love it. Around, I want to say 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, the timeline's a little fuzzy. Behavior stories started to change a bit in the game. Don't get me wrong, the world they created was amazing. But the way we used to get the backstory on the characters was 3 to 4, maybe 5 short paragraphs. Like, I keep mentioning Claudette because hers is just the easiest one to go into with this. Claudette was a student in France. Claudette was studying botany. Claudette got on the bus to go home from school one day, got engulfed by the fog, and woke up in the realm of the entity. There's a haunting beauty and simplicity to that, and a lot of the earlier characters have that. Like Nia, my favorite, my main, my forever, the survivor I will play above all others, is a graffiti artist. She was tagging the Crotus Pen Asylum where this dragon lady of a nurse used to work, smothering her own patients to stop their suffering, and got taken by the fog. Kate was playing in the woods. She's a musician. She was writing this song. A melody she never heard of came over her, and then the fog emerged and she was gone. The killer stories were always a little more in-depth. They'd be a little bit longer. Like, poor Wraith. Oh my gosh. Wraith was like the most tragic backstory until Spirit. So he was abused by his father. and tricked into hiding evidence of presumably some kind of like mafia mob crime syndicate where they were hiding bodies inside the cars at the junkyard, and he was in charge of taking the cars and putting them in the crusher. And these people weren't necessarily dead yet. He snapped when he found out, killed his father, and the entity took him. That's sad. Some of them are straight up serial killers. Ghostface, we'll get into that idea, is a serial killer. The Oni was a warlord. The game started to grow more than behavior could imagine, right? So they suddenly had the opportunity to create content inspired by horror films. There's a Michael Myers chapter where we got The Shape, Michael Myers, and Laurie Strode playing the game, which means Lambkin Lane and that whole world is in the game of Dead by Daylight. One of the more surprising ones, we got Leatherface as his own chapter, which became an issue for years because they built Leatherface into the game already. They just didn't call him Leatherface, they called him Hillbilly because he didn't have rights. So then Leatherface became a weaker hillbilly. So then years later, only within the past year, they rebuilt Leatherface to be a stronger killer and not rely on all the groundwork they set up for Hillbilly. It gets more complicated than that. Amanda from Saw and Detective Tapp from Saw are in the game. The Ghostface mask featured in Scream, but not connected to the Scream Enterprise, is in the game. Freddy Krueger from the remake, but not the original films, is in the game. The Demogorgon, as well as Steve and Nancy from Stranger Things, are in the game. And Silent Hill is in the game. Pyramid Head is a killer, and Cheryl Mason plus some alternate cosmetics that change who she is are also in the game. They'd love to have Jason from Friday the 13th, but that is its whole other topic of discussion. Anyway, you can see where I'm going here. The entity can pull characters from anywhere. The real world, your imagination. They don't even need to be human. They're turned into monsters when they arrive. These character backstories started becoming more and more elaborate. I read some of these like Victorian ghost stories or Southern Gothic. They are fascinating and terrifying and sad and tragic. Tragedy is starting to be the link condition to all of these characters. Except for the ones who want and gleefully did commit murder. We don't quite know the entity's motivations, but we do know the end goal, the trial. 4 survivors are fighting for their life against a murderous monster, and even if they live, they get sent right back to the campfire, where they're going to get pulled into the game, play again and again and again until the entity has no more value in them and they're gone for good. I thought the only way to add in a little bit of original fun tonight was to write a little bit of fan fiction. Just a soupçon. I've written a lot of fan fiction. I'm not telling you where to find it. And I'm not telling you what it's about. But I find fan fiction a fascinating writing exercise. And I also didn't want to write, here's what I would put in a game as a survivor or a killer. The answer is anything Clive Barker. And I've been very vocal about that. There are 2 things I'm vocal about in this game. 1, accessibility options added to the menu, and 2, Clive Barker. Don't care what. It could be him himself at this point. Anyway, here's my little spin on some alternate DVD lore called Entity. I'm so close. I can feel them. It Her? I'm not sure. This thing, this consciousness is connected to the disappearance of dozens of people throughout history. Anyone who goes after them finds nothing but madness and sorrow. Anyone who walks away forgets them. I will not forget them. My job is to find missing things, to relink the chains of our history so no one will be forgotten. It's simple enough when we know there's someone who went, or can at least guess what happened to them. There is no guessing what happened to this being's victims. Captives? Victims. There are traces of these stories dating back millennia. Even within the mysterious disappearance of some ancient cultures, tales are told of people who were just gone. They were teachers and healers, students and strangers, there one day and gone by night. I wish I could connect them through tragedy or morality or lineage or deeds, but I can't. Some of them do link together, a common town, a shared history, and others are nothing alike. How can a popular talk show host disappear and not even make the news? A student going home alone? A junkyard worker who never shows up for another shift? Sure. Those make sense. But a famous singer? The number one suspect in a series of brutal murders? And no one realizes they're gone? That's not true either. I first found the possible link in 5 disappearances around a ski resort. There wasn't much to go off of, but a connected series of paintings. These masks were tagged all over the town and in another artist's actual commissioned work. And then they just stopped appearing. No one touches them, and no one acknowledges them. More connections started to form after. An abandoned hospital in Norway has a history of missing patients, nurses, and urban explorers. A group of students in Europe disappeared a generation after their parents in the same place. People exploring specific prisons and justice systems around the world vanished like the historical monsters who made these places notorious enough to study. Something is wrong, and I don't know what. All I can do is dig further into the past. Piece together stories from around the world that just seem slightly wrong. Everywhere I look now is signs of this force putting pressure on our world. Every culture has these stories that are lost to history. I'm beginning to wonder if there is an actual connection at all. Doubt is natural in this kind of research. Still, I feel close. I'm seeing the pattern, however slight, in the news, in the letters, in the records I have access to. It's almost like it wants me to come closer. Nothing else matters. I will find out what has happened to these people. Their stories will be told, and I will be the one to tell them. This entity will not be unknown. Archive of our own could never. And no, I will not be publishing that somewhere else, thank you. I only have a few recommendations tonight to accompany you on similar media to Dead by Daylight. The first is something I recommend regardless of the Dead by Daylight kind of idea. The anthology films of Amicus Productions. These are the horror anthologies that set the standard and establish the mold, the form of this kind of film. If you like the idea of Dead by Daylight and all the different worlds and the characters and the stories being told, you'll love a good anthology horror film. My favorite of the Amicus films is Torture Garden, but they're all really good in this regard. It's characters connected by chance that have been drawn to the same location and have their stories featured and told as living nightmares, whether they believe it to be true or not. My second recommendation for you is the game Until Dawn. This is another horror film style game. It's very cinematic in its approach, and there's all these branching and weaving narratives that you impact with the choices you make in the game. You jump between playing different characters in the typical slasher scenario. A bunch of young people head out to a remote place and they start dying. It's much more in-depth than that. The lore is sensational, and Until Dawn is like one of those games that people are like, ooh, Silent Hill made it into Dead by Daylight. Could Until Dawn be next? I could see it. Finally, probably the most well-known of the recommendations for this, Cabin in the Woods. Cabin in the Woods has a very similar concept to this game. A group of young people arrive in this remote cabin in the woods. What we discover very quickly is that they are brought there not by chance, but by design of this mysterious organization led by who knows what, controlling we don't want to know, that can destroy the world. The young people have to choose the tool of their own destruction. If they grab one object, it's this killer. If they grab another object, it's that killer. And then the forces of horror and everything you can imagine are brought out from the warehouse and sent to destroy them. And other people like them around the world. This is horror comedy, a lot more than Dead by Daylight, but it's the same kind of idea. We're riffing on horror themes in a new meta text that's examining how we interact with horror in the world. That's going to be it for the new episode of Spookier Times, a podcast of horror, gothic, and weird fiction across media. Once again, I am Robert J. Gannon. You can find me there at all social media, with the exception of Twitch, which is relaunched since the last episode. There you will find me as Other Robert, and a connected YouTube channel, Other Robert Games. All those links have been updated in the link tree in the description. You can also find us on Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/RobertJGannon. There we have our online shop featuring all the materials for Tick, a Short Musical, and more to come very soon, as well as the ability to tip us once or subscribe to continue supporting our content at Sketching Details and Spookier Times across media. Have fun, relax, and enjoy the world of Dead by Daylight.